The trial distressed the relatives of the victims, who heard the details of how Bonin disposed of the bodies. In January 1982, after deliberating for 8 days, the jury found Bonin guilty on 10 counts of murder.
Pursuant to Penal Code Section 190.3 of the State of California, do determine the penalty shall be death.
For grieving relatives, the ordeal was finally over.
Thankful that it's over with, and we had a super jury, and the verdict was, he earned it. He earned it.
That's the only thing they could have done.
Defense lawyer William Charvet argued that Bonin had been psychologically damaged in Vietnam and had never received proper treatment. But prosecutor Norris thought the verdict was just.
Mr. Bonin is a very substantial killer. He is now off the street with a proper penalty, and I think the jury is to be congratulated. I think they have done an admirable job, a just job.
2 weeks later, Bonin returned to the courtroom and was sentenced to death. He was sent to San Quentin, where his appeals began. But after 17 years on death row, Bonin's time ran out. His execution was scheduled for February the 23rd, 1996. David McVicker was a witness.
Now I will also be able to visualize him being dead. So hopefully he can't rape me in my dreams anymore.
Bonin was the first person executed in California by lethal injection. Protesters for and against the death penalty gathered outside the prison the day of Bonin's execution.
I believe morally that no one has a right to kill, and if that is true, then what he did was morally wrong, and I believe what we're doing tonight is morally wrong.
Bonin spoke to a local radio station and expressed remorse for his crimes. Witnesses said he seemed resigned to his fate. Meanwhile, the protests continued. "15 minutes before midnight, William Bonin was taken to the execution chamber. He was strapped to a gurney, and a lethal cocktail of chemicals was injected into his body. He was dead within minutes. Around the same time Bonin was killing in California, a racist from Alabama began preying upon unsuspecting victims. In May 1980, civil rights leader Vernon Jordan arrived at a hotel in Fort Wayne, Indiana. As he stepped out of his car, he was shot and critically wounded. Jordan was president of the Urban League and a fierce opponent of racism. A few months later, Joseph Paul Franklin, a white supremacist, was charged with the shooting. At the time, Franklin was already in custody for a number of racially motivated murders. His victims included a white man and black woman in Oklahoma, another mixed-race couple in Pennsylvania, and 4 black men in Buffalo, New York. All were shot with a high-powered hunting rifle. As Franklin was led into court in October 1980, he claimed the charges against him were trumped up.
That was just because of my white racist views.
Do you have white racist views?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Well, how do you feel about blacks?
I'm against race mixing and communism.
Franklin was born in Mobile, Alabama. His father was an alcoholic drifter who beat him up. Franklin grew up at the time of Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement, all of which troubled him. Franklin's resentment grew as integration became a fact of American life. He didn't understand why troops should be used to escort black students to school. Franklin wasn't drafted into the Vietnam War. Instead, he joined the American Nazi Party. After the death of his mother in 1972, Franklin moved to Atlanta, Georgia. By then, police had him in their sights after his arrests for carrying concealed weapons. In Atlanta, he joined the neo-fascist National States Right Party and the local Ku Klux Klan. He was fixated on mixed-race couples and insulted them at every opportunity, even spraying one couple with mace. By that time, the Ku Klux Klan was in rapid decline, but Franklin still believed in its tradition of racial bigotry and hatred. What the modern Klan lacked in numbers, it made up for with fanatical recruits like Franklin, who conducted military-style combat training at special camps. In July 1977, Franklin placed a bomb in a Chattanooga, Tennessee synagogue, starting his one-man campaign of racial and religious hatred in the South and Midwest. Over the next 3 years, Franklin shot and killed up to 20 people, as far afield as Wisconsin, Oklahoma, and Cincinnati. By early August 1980, Franklin had reached Salt Lake City, Utah. Within days, he shot and killed 2 African-American men out jogging. Then, an associate of Franklin's told the FBI that Franklin often sold his blood to make money. Blood banks everywhere were alerted, and he was finally picked up in Kentucky in September. But Franklin managed to escape and fled to Florida. He didn't stay ahead of the FBI for long. They caught him in October in Lakeland at yet another blood bank, and he was arrested. Four days later, President Jimmy Carter made an official visit to Lakeland. A few years earlier, Franklin had sent Carter a death threat. Perhaps it was more than a coincidence that Franklin was in Lakeland when he was arrested. Franklin's first trial for murder was held in Utah. He was sentenced to 4 life terms. Then, in 1982, he was tried for shooting Vernon Jordan. Franklin had targeted Jordan as he arrived for a meeting of the Urban League in Fort Wayne. Jordan was shot in the back outside his hotel room. At the time, he was with Martha Coleman, a member of the Fort Wayne Urban League. There were no African Americans on the jury at Franklin's trial. He was kept under heavy and constant guard. He wore a bulletproof vest for his own protection and was held close to the courthouse. There were no witnesses to the Jordan shooting, so the jury had to rely on circumstantial evidence. It was insufficient, and Franklin was acquitted. Government prosecutors were unhappy with the verdict.
When a notorious crime is committed and it goes unprosecuted, that public's confidence in law enforcement can be undermined.
One person who understood Franklin's capacity for murder was Melissa Powers, an assistant Ohio prosecutor. In September 1980, he told her he had shot 2 young boys just because they were black. By the time he was brought to justice, Joseph Paul Franklin had committed 20 murders across 11 states. He is now on death row. Those traveling around America have sometimes run into more than they bargained for. In Kansas, the Bender family laid in wait as their victims came to them. But Henry Lee Lucas, William Bonin, and Joseph Paul Franklin used the roads as a killing ground and a means of escape. Who knows how many unwary travelers made one too many journeys and met horror on the highway.